Well, hey there, junior highs. Thanks so much for coming to our premiere on a Wednesday night. Now, before we continue any further, I need to say, if you're a high school student watching this video, you're on the wrong YouTube premiere. We had some confusion last week, but that's okay. Hop over to More of the Story Week 2. This is Akward Week 2, and it's gonna be a great night. So, how are you guys doing this week? Have you had a good one? It's been really cold. Are you enjoying the cold? Do you not like the cold? I can't stand the cold. If I don't have to go outside, I'm not gonna go outside because it is so cold out there. But we do have a great night in store. We've got worship coming up with Hannah in a little bit. I'm gonna be doing the teaching this week for Akward Week 2, like I mentioned, and we have a little bit of a different game that involves a lot of talking from you. So that's gonna come up right after this. Bree's gonna be doing that this week, but we do have a couple of announcements before we continue. I've been mentioning this the last few weeks. Trivia Tuesday is happening on Tuesday nights. You need to be a part of that. If you miss the trivia that we do on Wednesday nights, we're doing trivia every single week. Last night we did winter themed trivia, which again, I can't stand winter, but we did have a number of people who said you should do winter themed trivia, and so we did it, and it was a fun night. Come next week and give your input on Mondays to the theme. Ask your parents if you can pop onto their Instagram account and give a suggestion to what we should do for our trivia, because we want more and more of your input, and it's so much fun. Then the other thing is, if you don't come to junior high Sunday mornings, you need to do that. It starts every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. Come on to the Zoom call, hang out with the team, hang out with more junior highs. We have so much fun doing it, and it is a blast. We've been doing this like YouVersion Bible app study together. Every day we're commenting and reading, and we want you to be a part of it. So come on Sunday mornings, we'll tell you a little bit more about it, but we would love to see you there. Okay. Other than that, I'm so excited for a great night. I hope you are too, and I'm gonna send it over to Bree for this week's game.
Hey everybody, welcome. We're playing a new game tonight. It's not trivia. I know some of you might be disappointed, but we're playing a game that some of you may have played before. It's called Four Corners, and this is a North Park edition. The answers are going to take place in the chat, and the idea is that you're going to be giving a slide that has 4 different options and a question. You have to go in the chat and tell your peers which color corner you belong in this particular question. All right, let's get started. You have 2 minutes to answer each question. Question number 1. What is your favorite room in the church? Is it the auditorium, the gym, the theater, or somewhere else? think my favorite room is probably the youth theater. There's always good things back there. People, candy, sometimes there's coffee. What's not to love? Okay, speaking of treats, here's your next question. What is your favorite thing at snack bar? Is it chocolate bar, candy, pop, or sour keys? I think my favorite thing at snack bar is, oh man, I'll never turn down a fresh roll of Starburst. Okay, next question. When did you start going to North Park? Was it before grade 1, from grade 1 to 5, grade 6 to 8, or was it in high school? I first started attending North Park when Josh and I had just gotten married and he had moved here. We came here from the GTA to work here at Youth. So that was a while ago. Next question. What is your favorite part about Wednesday nights when we're back in person? Is it the worship and teaching? Or is it small groups? Or is it gym time? Or is there something else? Tell us. What is your favorite part when we're all together on Wednesday nights? Okay, so my favorite part is probably just anytime we get to interact with each other. I know I'm talking out of a place where I haven't seen people in a long time, but I always have enjoyed getting to know more about a lot of you guys during the times when we're in transition. So like going from welcoming to going to have our worship time and then having time at snack bar just to mingle and meet each other. I love that part. All right, our very last question. Out of these 4 traits, what characteristic best describes your small group leaders? Okay, ready? Here they are. Loving, compassionate, trustworthy, or patient. I'd love to hear it, and I know they'd probably love to hear it too. So let's hear it in the chat. Thanks so much for playing, you guys. It was so nice to hear more about who you are and where you come from, and also how we feel about our leaders who are so dedicated to you guys. And I'm so glad we get a chance to worship together tonight. Speaking of which, Hannah is next. Let's prepare our hearts for some worship.
Hi everyone. Before we jump into worship today, I have a really quick challenge for you all. Before you tune me out, just hear me out for a second. So it's something I've been thinking about as I've planned worship over the past couple weeks, has really been trying to maintain a posture of worship, because I feel like it can get really easy when we're constantly in video chats and constantly watching recordings and constantly online, to get stuck in the idea of, like, when we come to Wednesday nights and come to do worship, it gets very mundane and it's just another recording and we're just listening to more music, and it's very easy to kind of tune it out. But I really want us to try to remember the importance that we're not here for us. This time of worship is not for us to feel good or for us to enjoy listening to ourselves or for us to hate listening to ourselves. But it's really a time for us to bring what we have to God and be open to receiving whatever He has to give us. And part of that involves readying yourself physically and mentally to give and to receive. So I don't know how many of you were here, I guess a couple years ago now, last year, I can't remember, but Jordan LG came and talked to us at youth about worship and about like the posture of worship. And I just remember him lying like face down on the ground. But that was his example of the posture of worship and the idea of having like such reverence for God that we just kind of lay everything we have down. And I know that that looks different for everybody. For some people, getting into that kind of space to be ready to worship God can be through music. It can be through singing or through playing an instrument. For some people, it's drawing or journaling or walking or any number of things it could be. But I encourage you today to do that, whatever it is. So whether it means you need to stand up right now and stand with your eyes closed and your hands up, or if it means you need to go grab your instrument or a journal or a pencil or whatever it is, I encourage you to go do it. And I'm not going to say to pause the video because then we're all going to be off time and it'll be kind of complicated. So I'm going to give you permission to miss the first few seconds of our first song. It's fine. I'm over it. But just if you need to, go grab whatever you need to go grab. Yeah. And then I just encourage you to sit in that posture or stand, whatever it is. Just be in that place and be ready for God to speak to you, but also just for you to give what you have to God. And also, sometimes that's not very much. Sometimes it's literally just standing or sitting and being quiet because you don't have very much to give today. And that's also fine, because the cool thing about God is that he accepts whatever you have and he'll meet you halfway. So if that's all you have today and you don't have very much, that's also fine. But I encourage you to give what you do have into worshiping God just for the next couple of minutes. So before we do that, I'm going to pray, and then we'll jump straight in. So God, thank you so much for this time that we have to worship you. I just pray that you would really help us to worship you. I pray that you would help us to give what we have. And I thank you that you receive what we have as we give it, as it is. And God, I just pray, that you would meet us where we are tonight. But that we would remember that this is truly for you. This is not about us. So just ready our hearts for worship and to hear the message later on tonight. Amen. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made it. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before him. He's coming on the clouds. Kings and kingdoms will bow down. And every chain will break. His broken hearts declare his grace. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him.
Okay, so we are in the second week of our series called Awkward, and you might be asking yourself, why is it called that? Well, it's not because you need any more awkward experiences in your life, because we all have plenty of those, I know that for sure. But it's because sometimes talking about the stuff that really matters in life can be a little bit awkward. But the thing is, we think that the church is the best place to have these important conversations about these big topics in our lives, no matter how awkward they are. And that's why in this series we're talking a lot about sexual desires. Yes, you heard me. We're talking about sex and sexual desires at church. And yes, it's going to be a little bit awkward, but that's okay. We think you can handle it. And not just that, we think that it's actually good to talk about it, because whether or not we realize it, God cares about our sexual desires. He cares about what we do with them, and because it's important to Him, it needs to be important to us. Some of you may be really interested in this conversation because you're curious about sexual things and you have a lot of questions, and that's great. That's really normal and healthy. But for many of you, you might feel embarrassed or awkward thinking or talking about sexual things, and I've been there before. I understand the place you're coming from, and that is totally fine also. Some of you may be even wondering why we're talking about sex at church. You might not even be interested in it at all and might not have any questions about it yet, and again, that is okay. All of these things are totally normal and healthy. No matter where you are right now, when it comes to thinking or not thinking about sexual things, this conversation is for you. Because God's perfect plan for our lives applies to all of us. And as a church, we want to help you develop healthy and positive thoughts when it comes to sexual desires now that you're junior highs, so that they can impact your life both today and in the future. Okay, so before we go any further, I want to tell you about the time that I got really into disc golf. Now, a lot of you know about disc golf because of Weston or Jared or maybe Luke Prasad, a few different leaders in the youth group all play disc golf. But one summer, when Weston and Jared and I started playing disc golf, I just got completely obsessed with the sport. I learned that it was way bigger than we could ever have imagined. There are all sorts of discs and different gear that you can buy for this sport, kind of like regular golf where you have different discs for different shots. And then we found out that, like ESPN, disc golf had like this broadcast network on YouTube where you could watch the tournaments every weekend, and we were following our favorite players and seeing how they were doing. And this thing that started so small by Weston and I just finding some old disc golf baskets in the church closet, the church gym closet, turned into this massive obsession. And I know that I have kind of like this behavior where I get really into hobbies. You know, I picked up fishing one summer and I couldn't get enough of that. Board games, now regular golf or video games. I get really into these hobbies, and even though I still love and appreciate all these different things like fishing and board games, I tend to get really obsessed for a season with one type of hobby. And you could argue that I was just really passionate about disc golf that one summer, but in all honesty, I was borderline obsessed. Okay, so we're gonna take a second and I wanna go to the chat for 30 seconds, that's it. And I want you to tell me something that you are so passionate about. I know some of our students from Junior High Sunday Mornings are obsessed with reading or Roblox or things like that. So tell us in the chat what you would say you are passionate about. Okay, you've got 30 seconds. Maybe you can relate to one of those things that we saw in the chat, something that you're really passionate about. Maybe you're passionate about soccer or makeup tutorials on YouTube or hiking or the latest season of The Greatest Show on Netflix. Maybe you're really into music or art or theater or sports or church. Maybe you're passionate about a cause or a relationship or a person in your life. Whatever it is, everybody knows you love it because you talk about it all the time. You think about it a lot, you give it a lot of your time and your energy. After all, you're passionate about it. While there's nothing wrong with being passionate about things, problems can start when passions become obsessions. So how can we tell when a feeling that we have is an obsession or a passion? Well, a passion is typically a love and an excitement for something that doesn't cause us to ignore everything else in our lives. It usually makes the other parts of our lives better. So when you're passionate about soccer, you practice a lot and you work hard to be the best player on your team. And when you're passionate about being a good friend, you spend time with your friends and you think about how you can include or get to know others. When you're passionate about art, you paint or you draw or you sketch when you have the time so that you're going to get better at it. But when it's time to focus on your schoolwork, or it's time to get some sleep, or your mom asks you to take a break from it, you step away from what you're focused on or you're passionate about with no problem at all. An obsession, on the other hand, has a tendency to take over our lives. That summer, I couldn't stop thinking about disc golf. I would have disc golf dreams. It controls our thoughts and our motives and our actions, and it's what we think about all the time. It's the first thing we consider when making a decision about anything. And because it impacts every other area of our life, it's usually not all in good ways. When you're obsessed with video games, sometimes you stay up all night playing, you don't get enough sleep, and you don't return messages from friends, and then you flip out on your little brother when he tries to interrupt you while you're playing. And as a result, you start to suffer because you're not getting enough sleep. You're not spending enough time with people. You're not focusing on the important things in life. When you're obsessed with social media, you spend most of your day planning or posting to your profile, and you zone out of in-person conversations with your friends because you're thinking about what it's like to get behind the screen. And because of that, even though your social media is awesome, your real life relationships aren't doing well. Or maybe you're obsessed with the person that you're dating and you talk to them all the time, and you disobey your house rules because you want to talk to them later than you're allowed to, and you only spend time with them. And as a result, parts of your life aren't the same. You're breaking rules, you're hurting friends, you're isolating other people from what's going on in your relationship, and that one relationship is controlling every single decision that you make. See what I mean? Obsessions have a way of controlling us, and they motivate us to do things that we wouldn't otherwise do, and they can even cause us to put other relationships at risk for the sake of them. We're willing to get in trouble, lose friends, or make choices that we might regret, all because we want to give all of our time and energy to that one thing, our obsession. So what does this have to do with sexual desires like I talked about at the beginning? Well, remember when we use the word desire, we simply mean to have a strong feeling of wanting to have or do something. And when we talk about sexual desires, we're talking about the sexual things that we feel, think about, or want to do. And understanding that is so important because if we're not careful, our desires become more than just desires. They can turn into more than just something that we're interested or want or curious about. They can become obsessions. They can control us and lead us to make decisions that aren't best for us. See, in this age, in this phase of your life, things are changing a lot. And a lot of you are probably becoming interested in or curious about sexual stuff for the very first time, even if it's in small ways. And if you're not, that's still totally fine. We think it's important to talk about right now because whether you have questions about dating or relationships or sexual desires, we want to help you navigate it with integrity. Remember, Jared last week told us that sexual integrity is choosing to respond to sexual things that we feel, think, and desire in a way that respects ourselves and others and God. It's responding in a way that's healthy, in a way that doesn't control or confuse us, a way that doesn't allow an interest to become an obsession. So today we're going to read something written a long time ago by a guy named Paul. And I think he had a lot of wisdom and guidance to share when it comes to this idea of interests, passions, and obsessions. You may have heard of Paul because he was one of the major writers of the Bible. And when he was alive, Paul spread the word about Jesus and what it meant to follow him. And part of the way that he did that was by writing letters to other Christians to encourage them and to help them live God's best for their lives. Today we're actually going to read one of those letters. So here's 1 Corinthians 6:12. I am allowed to do all things, but not everything is good for me to do. Even if I am free to do all things, I will not do them if I think that it would be hard for me to stop when I know I should. Again, that's 1 Corinthians 6:12. I love this verse because it is so clear. Basically what Paul is saying is, yeah, I've got the freedom to do anything I want, but all that stuff that I want to do, it's not always good for me to do it all of the time. So even though I can do it, I'm not going to do it if it's going to be hard for me to give up. Now, I don't know about you, but I can definitely relate to what Paul is saying here. I know exactly what it feels like to be so excited about something and to have the freedom to do it, but I also know that I have to be careful about keeping what I'm passionate about from becoming an obsession. An obsession that I struggle to walk away from or to stop doing. As a junior high, I think you probably get it too. Think about it, the older that you get, the more opportunities you have to do all sorts of things you want to. Soon you'll be able to get to choose some of your classes at school, you get to stay up later, you might get a locker at school, maybe you can eat something because your braces are finally off. You might be getting a phone soon, or you might start dating. In other words, you're starting to have more freedom. But again, as Paul reminds us here, we have to be wise about how we use that freedom. And I think that this is especially important when we talk about things like dating and sex and sexual desires. In those areas of our life, you get more and more opportunities to learn about, or to think about, or even experience them as you grow up and you mature. Opportunities to date, opportunities to see PG-13 movies, opportunities to finally have that app or that social media platform that you've been dying to have, opportunities to read more mature books, opportunities to look up pictures online, opportunities to start a physical relationship with someone else, holding hands, kissing, sending inappropriate texts or pictures. These are things that you might have an opportunity to do, but when it comes to all of this stuff, I think we have to remember what Paul was getting at here. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. We might want to do something, but that doesn't mean that we should. We might have the freedom to do it, but that doesn't mean that it's the best thing for us. When we become obsessed with something, the line gets really blurry between what we can do and what we should do. And even if it's something that's good for us, that obsession can begin to control us. And all that freedom we're so excited about having when we grow up, and all the freedom that God gives us to live our best lives and choose what's healthy and good for us, well, we're letting that freedom get away. We're letting the person or the thing that we've shifted our attention to control us. And that's not what any of us wants for you, and it's certainly not the good design that God has for your life. Remember this, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. See, it's not that God doesn't want you to be passionate about something or attracted to anyone. In fact, just the opposite. He wants you to have these great, big, amazing, full lives. I know that because that's what Jesus said when he was on earth. He said, I have come that they may have life and they may live it to the full. That's John 10:10. God wants you to have a full and exciting life. He wants us to be people who are full of passion and excited about the things that we experience. And remember, he designed sexual desires and attraction to be a part of living your best life. If you find someone attractive, who do you think made that person? And who do you think gave you the ability to appreciate that person? Of course, God did. If we appreciate the way someone talks or thinks, you're appreciating a creation of God. And you have the freedom to express that God-given attraction in a way that honors ourselves, and honors others, and honors God. In other words, you can practice sexual integrity. So what does that mean for you and me? I think if we want to live the full and free lives that God wants for us, we need to start being honest about what we might be paying too much attention to. I think we need to get real about our obsessions. So let's start by doing these two things. Number one, recognize the obsession. How can we know when a passion has turned into an unhealthy obsession? Well, we can start by looking at what consumes or controls our time and thoughts. If it's taking us away from important things or important people, it probably has become an obsession. Maybe you find yourself messaging the person that you like no matter what time it is or who you're with. Maybe it means that you've been ignoring your friends or spending too much time with the person you're dating. Maybe you've been furious with your parents for taking your phone away. Those are all signs that you're moving towards an unhealthy obsession, and you need to start recognizing and naming that obsession so that it doesn't consume you. And number two, create boundaries. After you recognize your obsession, the next step is to find some balance in your life by creating some boundaries. You can start by talking to a trusted adult. Maybe it's your parent or guardian, maybe it's your small group leader, and have them help you create some limits for yourself. And then you can figure out the first step to take towards changing your behavior. You might have to make some tough choices like breaking up with someone or having parents put controls on your phone or limiting your screen time. But honestly, those things are worth it in the end. You'll be getting back the freedom to make healthier and wiser decisions for both yourself today and in the future. Now, for some of you who are struggling with more difficult things, this step might feel really awkward, and it's going to take a lot of courage. And it might be hard for you to talk to someone about an obsession that you might have. Maybe you're embarrassed by your obsession, or you're worried about what other people might think. You might think that no one else struggles with what you're struggling with, and no one will understand. But the person you're talking to can handle it. They won't think you're weird, or you're crazy, or you're a bad person. They'll think that you're brave for opening up and taking that first step on your path towards creating boundaries. God cares what we do with our sexual desires, and he wants us to guard ourselves from letting those interests become obsessions. When it comes to sexual things, he wants us to remember that even if we can do something, doesn't mean that it's best for us. Developing healthy thoughts and behaviors when it comes to this stuff is just another way that we can not only honor God, but ourselves, and love and respect the people that we have around us. And when we do this, we will not only have better and healthier relationships and make wiser choices, but it will also help us in our future relationships and our experiences as well. Now, I know that this is difficult. I know the conversations that we have like this are downright awkward. But I also know that having them is worth it because they're helping us take even the smallest step towards God's best for all areas of our life, including things like sexual desires. Remember, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. As you go to small groups tonight, I want you to think about this one question. Is there anything in your life right now that may have turned into an unhealthy obsession? Okay, let's quickly pray before you go to your small groups. God, thanks again that we can come together as a group of junior highs just to have an awkward conversation. God, even though we know it's awkward, we know it's important because it not only is setting us up for success now, but also in the future. So Father, help us to take those two steps. Help us to recognize the obsessions that we have in our lives, and then help us to set up boundaries so that they don't continue. God, help us to remember, just because we can do something doesn't mean we shouldn't. We need to be thinking about what that means for us, for the people around us, and for what it means with our relationship with you. So God, be with us as we go to small groups. Help our conversations to be good and important. Help us to open up to one another in the best way possible so that we can have great discussion, so that we can support one another, just like our small groups were intended to do. So thank you again for this time. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Well, thank you so much for being a part of tonight. Thanks for coming. Thanks for carving out some time of your day, but it's not over yet. We have our Zoom small groups happening right now. Make sure if you need the link to send us a message on Instagram or talk to your mom or dad, they've got the link in the email, and we would love for you to be a part of our Zoom small groups. If this is your first night or you've been attending maybe a few times over the last number of weeks and you haven't gotten connected with a small group, we would love to do that for you. So send us a message on IG or send me an email, josh.black@northpark.ca. I would love to get you connected with a small group. We've got some amazing small group leaders who want to get to know you, who want to talk to you, and so they'll be on Zoom, and we hope that you will too. So again, have a great night. We'll see you on Zoom.